The parking lot stretched before me like a gray ocean, endless rows of metal gleaming under the harsh afternoon sun. My feet ached in shoes 2 sizes too small, hand-me-downs from my older sister, and the weight of the grocery bags cut into my palms, leaving angry red marks that would take hours to fade. I shifted the bags, trying to redistribute the weight, and caught a whiff of the day-old bread I'd bought at discount. It smelled vaguely sweet, tinged with the promise of going stale soon. I was invisible here. I'd always been invisible. The supermarket job barely covered rent, and even that was slipping through my fingers like water. Mrs. Patterson had called me into her office yesterday, her voice syrupy with false sympathy as she'd explained that my hours were being redistributed. Redistributed. As if poverty were something that could be shared equally, parceled out in neat little portions. I'd smiled and nodded, swallowing the bitter taste of fear that rose in my throat. Now, weaving between cars toward my ancient Honda, more rust than paint. I let my mind wander to the electric bill waiting on my kitchen counter. 30 days past due. The notice had been printed in aggressive red letters, as if my financial failure needed to be color-coded for emphasis. I wasn't watching where I was going. The sickening crunch of metal against metal snapped me back to reality. My shopping bag had swung wide as I'd turned, and the corner, reinforced with cheap cardboard, had scraped along the side of a car, not just any car, a Mercedes. Sleek, black, and so pristinely polished I could see my horrified reflection in its surface. No, 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 I whispered, dropping to my knees beside the damage. The scratch ran at least 8 inches, a violent silver line cutting through the perfect paint job. My hands trembled as I touched it, as if somehow I could smooth it away, erase this moment from existence. The car probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. I glanced around the parking lot, empty. No witnesses to this disaster. No owner storming toward me with justified rage. Just me, the scratch, and the crushing weight of consequence settling onto my shoulders like a physical thing. I should have walked away. God, I should have just walked away. But my mother's voice echoed in my head, stern and uncompromising. We may be poor, Emma, but we're not dishonest. She'd died 3 years ago, cancer eating through her body while medical bills ate through any savings we'd managed to scrape together. Her moral compass, however, had survived intact in my memory, pointing true north even when every practical instinct screamed at me to run. I fumbled in my purse for a pen in the back of a receipt. My handwriting came out shaky, barely legible. I'm so sorry. I accidentally scratched your car. Please call me so I can make this right. Emma Wright, 555-0147. I read it twice, shame burning in my chest, then wedged the paper under the windshield wiper. The gesture felt simultaneously noble and stupid. How exactly was I going to make this right? I couldn't even afford to fix the dent in my own car door. The walk back to my Honda felt like a death march. I'd forgotten about it by the next morning. Not truly forgotten. The scratch haunted the edges of my consciousness like a persistent headache. But I'd shoved it into the category of problems I couldn't solve, alongside the electric bill and my dwindling bank account. The supermarket was unusually busy for a Thursday morning. Apparently, there was some sort of sale on organic produce that had drawn the wealthy crowd from the north side of town. They moved through the aisles with the casual confidence of people who'd never checked a price tag, filling their carts with imported cheeses and wine that cost more per bottle than my weekly grocery budget. I was restocking the cereal aisle when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. My thumb hovered over the decline button. Telemarketers, probably, or worse, a collections agency. But something made me answer, pressing the phone to my ear with my shoulder while I continued shelving boxes of cornflakes. Hello? Silence. Not empty silence, but the kind that held weight. Someone was there, breathing, considering. Emma Wright? The voice was male, deep, and carried an accent I couldn't quite place. Eastern European, maybe. Each word was precisely articulated, as if English were a language he'd learned through careful study rather than natural acquisition. Yes? My heart began a slow, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. You left a note on my car yesterday. The cereal box slipped from my fingers, hitting the floor with a hollow thud. Oh God, yes. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean. The bag just swung out and I was babbling. Words tumbling over each other in a desperate rush to explain, to apologize, to somehow make this fixable. Where are you now? He didn't sound angry. That was somehow worse. His tone was neutral, flat, giving away nothing. "I'm at work. Harris Supermarket on 5th Street, but after my shift I was already calculating. If I skipped lunch for a month, maybe 2. If I picked up extra hours, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Wait, you don't have to." The line went dead. I stood in the cereal aisle, phone still pressed to my ear, and felt the first tendrils of real fear curl around my spine. Something about that voice, about the absolute certainty in his words, suggested this was not a man accustomed to being contradicted. Not a man who made requests, only statements. 20 minutes. I glanced down at my uniform, a polyester vest over a cheap white shirt, both stained with the morning's mishaps. My hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and I couldn't remember if I'd even put on mascara this morning. Not that it mattered. This wasn't a social call. This was Judgment Day. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. I tried to focus on work, on arranging boxes into neat rows, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Mrs. Patterson walked past, frowning at my obvious distraction, and I forced myself to move faster, to look productive. 18 minutes. What would he look like? I'd constructed an image in my mind. Middle-aged, probably balding, the kind of self-important businessman who drove luxury cars to compensate for personal inadequacies. He'd yell, threaten to sue, demand payment I couldn't provide. Maybe he'd be reasonable. Maybe we could work out some sort of payment plan. Maybe. 23 minutes after the call, the automatic doors at the front of the store slid open. I was at the register by then, covering someone's break, and I had a perfect view of the entrance. Later, I would think about fate, about timing, about how different my life might have been if I'd been in the back room or on a different aisle. But in that moment, all I could do was stare. He wasn't middle-aged or balding. He was probably in his mid-30s, tall, easily over 6 feet, with the kind of build that spoke of deliberate maintenance. Not a gym rat's bulk, but the lean, dangerous muscle of someone who viewed physical strength as a tool rather than an aesthetic. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, and probably cost more than my car. Everything about him was precise, controlled, from the way he moved, economical, purposeful, to the way his dark eyes swept the store with the calculated assessment of a predator evaluating territory. But it wasn't just him. 2 men flanked him, both wearing dark suits and expressions of professional boredom. Security. The one on the left had a bulge under his jacket that made my stomach drop. The one on the right kept one hand near his hip, eyes constantly moving, cataloging exits and potential threats. They shouldn't have been intimidating in a suburban supermarket at 10 in the morning. They were. The man in the center, my Mercedes owner, I presumed, pulled out his phone, glanced at it, then his gaze locked onto me with laser precision. Even from 50 feet away, I felt the impact of that look like a physical force. He walked toward me, and the crowd parted without seeming to notice they were doing it. Something about his presence, his bearing, made people instinctively move aside. The 2 security guards maintained their positions, flanking him at a distance that was protective without being obvious. Up close, he was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from granite, and those eyes, dark, almost black, and utterly unreadable. His cologne reached me first, expensive and subtle, with notes of cedar and something darker, more primal. It overwhelmed the store's usual scent of floor cleaner and refrigerated produce. Emma right. It wasn't a question. My mouth had gone completely dry. Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. He studied me with the same thorough assessment he'd given the store, and I resisted the urge to fidget, to apologize again, to fill the silence with nervous chatter. His gaze moved from my face to my uniform to my hands, still slightly trembling, and something flickered in his expression. Not quite sympathy. Calculation, maybe. "The scratch on my car," he said finally, his accent more pronounced in person. "How do you propose to fix it?" This was it. The moment where I'd have to confess my complete inability to pay for the damage, where he'd probably threaten legal action, and I'd end up working the rest of my life to pay off a debt that would grow with interest until it consumed everything. I started, then stopped. What could I possibly say? I can pay for it. In installments. If you'd be willing to. The repair will cost approximately $3,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $3,000. I didn't have $300. I didn't have $30 that wasn't already allocated to keeping myself fed and housed. I'll pay it, I heard myself say, even as my brain screamed that this was impossible. However long it takes, I'll pay it. Something shifted in his expression. His head tilted slightly, studying me with renewed interest. One of his guards stepped closer, murmuring something in a language I didn't recognize. Russian, maybe? And the man waved him away with an impatient gesture. You work here? He glanced around the store with thinly veiled disdain. Yes. How much do you make? The question was invasive, inappropriate, and I should have refused to answer. But there was something about his presence that made refusal seem not just difficult, but impossible. Minimum wage. About 20 hours a week right now. He was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then, come with me. What? Outside, to discuss terms. He was already turning, assuming my compliance. Every instinct screamed danger. This man, with his expensive suit and armed guards, wanted me to follow him outside, away from witnesses and security cameras. This was how women disappeared, became statistics, cautionary tales whispered in parking lots. But what choice did I have? I glanced at Mrs. Patterson, who was watching this exchange with poorly concealed curiosity. I need to... My shift. Take your break, he said, still not looking back. It wasn't a suggestion. Somehow, I found myself following him through the automatic doors into the harsh sunlight. The Mercedes was parked directly in front, illegally blocking 2 handicapped spaces. No parking ticket decorated its windshield, though I could see the meter maid's cart just down the street. Even traffic enforcement, apparently, recognized something about this vehicle that warranted caution. The scratch looked even worse in daylight, a vicious violation of the car's perfect surface. He stopped beside it, one hand resting casually on the hood, and fixed me with that unreadable stare. $3,000, he repeated. At your current income, accounting for living expenses, it would take you approximately 3 years to repay this debt. I nodded miserably. 3 years sounded optimistic. I have a different proposal. Hope flickered in my chest, fragile and desperate. Anything. I'll do anything. The words hung in the air between us, and I realized too late how they sounded, how vulnerable they made me. His expression didn't change, but one of his guards, the one with the gun, smirked slightly before schooling his features back to neutrality. I need someone, he said slowly, choosing each word with care. Someone trustworthy. Someone who would leave a note on a stranger's car rather than walk away. Someone... He paused, and for the first time, something almost human flickered in those dark eyes. Someone honest. I don't understand. Work for me. 6 months. Your debt will be cleared, and you'll be paid enough to cover your current expenses plus a significant bonus. It sounded too good to be true. It sounded like every cautionary tale I'd ever heard about offers that came with invisible strings, that transformed desperate girls into victims. What kind of work? My voice barely rose above a whisper. He smiled then, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen, not because it was cruel, but because it held absolutely no warmth. Legitimate work. You'll be compensated fairly and treated with respect, but the work requires discretion, complete discretion. If you accept, you cannot speak of it to anyone. Not friends, not family. No one. I don't... Think about it, he interrupted, pulling a business card from his inner jacket pocket. It was heavy cardstock, expensive, with nothing but a phone number embossed in silver. No name, no company, just those 10 digits. Call this number within 24 hours with your answer. He slid into the back of the Mercedes, his guards following with practiced efficiency. The engine purred to life, a sound so smooth it seemed to mock my Honda's death rattle. And the car glided away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with a business card in my shaking hands and the terrible certainty that I'd just been offered a deal with the devil. I had no idea that the devil's name was Alexei Volkov, or that by tomorrow morning, my choice would set in motion a series of events that would shatter everything I thought I knew about safety, danger, and the razor-thin line between the two. All I knew was that as I watched the Mercedes disappear into traffic, the scratch on its side catching the sunlight one last time, I was already planning to make the call. God help me. I was already planning to say yes. The business card sat on my kitchen counter for exactly 14 hours before I touched it again. I'd placed it there when I got home from my shift, positioning it carefully beside the overdue electric bill, as if the proximity might somehow balance out cosmic scales. Then I'd spent the rest of the evening pretending it didn't exist, moving around my tiny apartment with exaggerated normalcy, eating ramen because it was cheap, watching TV shows I didn't actually see. But my eyes kept drifting back to those silver numbers. By midnight, I'd constructed and demolished a dozen different scenarios. Maybe he ran a legitimate business and genuinely needed an assistant. Maybe this was an elaborate human trafficking scheme. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I wasn't being paranoid enough. I'd Googled the phone number. No results. Tried reverse lookup services. Nothing. The card itself yielded no clues. No watermark. No logo. Just that pristine cardstock, and those 10 digits that seemed to pulse with possibility and threat in equal measure. At 2 a.m, I gave up on sleep and made a list of pros and cons. Pros. Money. Enough money to pay my bills, maybe even save something. The chance to escape the slow drowning of poverty, even if only temporarily. The look in his eyes when he'd called me honest, as if honesty were a rare commodity he valued. Cons. Everything else. The guards with guns. The expensive suit that screamed of money from questionable sources. The way he'd commanded the space around him like someone accustomed to absolute authority. The complete absence of verifiable information. By 6 a.m, I'd decided to decline. Too risky. Too strange. By 7, I was reconsidering. The electric company had left another notice, this one promising disconnection within 5 days. By 8, I was staring at my phone, the business card clutched in my other hand, trying to remember when exactly I'd become someone who had to weigh survival against safety. I called at 8:47 a.m. before I could change my mind again. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. Yes. Not hello. Not a greeting. Just acknowledgement. It's Emma Wright. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I'm calling about your offer. Silence stretched between us, heavy with evaluation. I could hear something in the background, voices speaking in that same foreign language. Russian, maybe, and the distant sound of classical music. Tchaikovsky, if my limited cultural education served me correctly. Your answer? Still that careful, precise English, each word articulated like a legal contract. I have questions first. Of course. Was that approval in his tone? I couldn't tell. What exactly would I be doing? You said legitimate work, but that's not very specific. You would be managing certain domestic affairs, coordinating schedules, handling correspondence, ensuring smooth operation of daily logistics. He paused. Think of it as being a personal assistant, but one who values discretion above all else. It sounded reasonable. It sounded too reasonable. Why me? You could hire anyone, someone with experience, qualifications. I told you why. His voice dropped slightly, taking on an edge that made my skin prickle. I need someone honest, someone who leaves notes on cars instead of running. Such people are rare in my world. My world. As if he existed in a different reality than the rest of us. Maybe he did. If I say yes, when would this start? Today. This afternoon. A car will collect you at 2 o'clock. Bring nothing but essentials, toiletries, clothing for 1 week. Everything else will be provided. My heart hammered against my ribs. Wait, I'd be living. Where exactly? That will be explained when you arrive. You'll have your own quarters, complete privacy, and freedom to leave during designated hours. Another pause. But while you're working, Emma, you belong to me. Your time, your attention, your loyalty. All of it belongs to me. Is that understood? The way he said my name, Emma, sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. It sounded like possession. like a claim being staked. I need to think. No. The word cracked through the phone like a whip. No more thinking. Yes or no. Right now. This was insane. This was every warning I'd ever received about stranger danger and too good to be true offers, and men who appeared out of nowhere with impossible solutions. Yes, I heard myself say. Yes, I'll do it. Good. Satisfaction colored his tone now, warm and dangerous. 2 o'clock. Be ready. The line went dead before I could respond, before I could ask any of the 1,000 follow-up questions crowding my throat. I stood in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, and wondered if I'd just made the best or worst decision of my life. The car that arrived at 1:58 p.m. was not the Mercedes. It was a black SUV with tinted windows so dark they were probably illegal, and the man who emerged from the driver's seat was built like a wall, 6.5 feet of solid muscle packed into another one of those ubiquitous dark suits. He had a scar running from his left eyebrow to his jaw, and eyes that assessed me with professional detachment. "Miss Wright?" His accent was thicker than Alexi's, the consonants harder. "Yes. I am Victor. I'll be driving you." He reached for the single duffel bag I'd packed. Everything I owned worth taking fit into one bag, which said something depressing about my life, and loaded it into the back with surprising gentleness. The interior of the SUV smelled like leather and something else, something metallic that made my imagination conjure uncomfortable images. Victor held the door open, waiting with infinite patience as I hesitated on the curb. This was it. Last chance to run. I climbed in. The drive took 40 minutes, winding through the city and then out into the suburbs I'd only ever seen from bus windows. The houses grew larger, the lots more expansive, until we were passing estates hidden behind stone walls and iron gates. Old money neighborhoods where gardeners cost more than my annual salary. Victor didn't speak during the drive, and I didn't try to force conversation. Instead, I watched the world transform outside the window, watched my reality shift from cramped apartments and discount supermarkets to manicured lawns and imported cars. We turned onto a private road, actual private, with a guardhouse and a barrier that lifted automatically at our approach. The guard inside nodded at Victor with familiar respect. The house at the end of the drive wasn't a house. It was an estate, all stone and glass and architectural ambition, sprawling across what must have been at least 5 acres. Gardens surrounded it, precisely maintained, and I could see what looked like a pool house in the distance, larger than my entire apartment. "Mr. Volkov is expecting you," Victor said, speaking for the first time since we'd left. He pronounced the name with a reverence that bordered on religious. Volkov, the O sounds deep and round. Volkov, so that was his name. I rolled it around in my mind, testing the weight of it. The front door opened before we reached it, and a woman appeared, 50s, steel-gray hair pulled into an immaculate bun, wearing what I could only describe as a housekeeper's uniform, updated for the 21st century. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes were sharp, cataloging everything about me in 2 seconds flat. "Miss Wright, I'm Mrs. Chen. I manage the household staff." Her English was perfect, accentless. "Mr. Volkov is in a meeting, but asked me to show you to your quarters and explain your duties." Duties. Right, this was a job, not a kidnapping. I had to keep reminding myself of that. Mrs. Chen led me through the house, and I tried not to gape like a tourist. Marble floors, artwork that looked museum quality, furniture that probably had provenance documents and insurance policies. Everything was immaculate, elegant, and somehow cold, despite the obvious expense. "The main house has 32 rooms," Mrs. Chen explained as we climbed a curved staircase that belonged in a palace. "Mr. Volkov's private quarters are in the east wing. Staff quarters are in the west wing, including yours. You'll have access to most of the house, but the east wing is strictly off-limits unless specifically summoned." "How many staff are there?" 12 permanent, not counting security. Cook, housekeepers, maintenance, drivers. You'll meet them gradually." She stopped in front of a door on the 2nd floor. "These are your rooms. Rooms, plural." She opened the door onto a suite that was easily 3 times the size of my apartment. A bedroom with a 4-poster bed, a sitting area with a small sofa and desk, and through another door, a bathroom done in cream marble with a tub deep enough to swim in. "Your clothing is in the closet." Mrs. Chen continued, moving to open a walk-in closet I hadn't noticed. Inside hung at least a dozen outfits. Dresses, pants, blouses, all in my size, all looking expensive. Mr. Volkov had them sent over this morning. If anything doesn't fit properly, let me know, and we'll have alterations done. I stared at the clothes, at this room, at this entire impossible situation. How did he know my size? Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change. Mr. Volkov is very thorough. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. Your primary responsibility, she continued, will be managing Mr. Volkov's personal schedule, social obligations, household matters, anything that doesn't pertain to his business operations. You'll coordinate with me for household needs, with Victor for transportation, and with Mr. Volkov directly for everything else. That's it? Just scheduling? And discretion. You will see things, hear things, meet people. You will remember nothing and repeat nothing. This is not optional, Miss Wright. This is survival. The word hung in the air between us, stark and terrifying in its honesty. What exactly does Mr. Volkov do? I asked quietly. Mrs. Chen looked at me with something that might have been pity. He solves problems. Very expensive problems. Beyond that, you don't need to know, and you definitely don't want to ask. She showed me the rest of the suite, the closet full of toiletries, all high-end brands I'd only seen in magazines, the desk stocked with office supplies, the small refrigerator filled with water and juice. Then she handed me a phone, sleek and new. This is your work phone. Mr. Volkov's number is programmed in. Answer when he calls, immediately, no matter the time. Understood? I nodded, numbness starting to set in. He'll want to see you at 6 o'clock. Dress appropriately. One of the dresses in the closet. I'll come collect you at 5:45. She moved toward the door, then paused. Miss Wright? A word of advice. Yes? Mr. Volkov values honesty above all else, but he also values loyalty. Learn the difference between the two quickly, and you'll do well here. Confuse them, and... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and I was alone in my golden cage. I sat on the edge of the bed, so soft it felt like sitting on a cloud, and tried to process what I'd agreed to. This wasn't a job. This was indenture. Servitude dressed up in expensive sheets and designer clothes. I was trapped here by debt, by desperation, by my own stupid insistence on being honest. The view from the window showed the gardens, the pool, the high stone walls that surrounded the property. Beautiful, isolated, safe or imprisoned, depending on your perspective. I had 5 hours until I faced Alexei Volkov again. 5 hours to decide if I was going to play along with this charade or demand to be taken home. But even as I considered it, I knew the truth. I had nowhere else to go. No money, no prospects, no options. He'd known that when he made his offer. Had probably calculated it with the same precision he applied to everything else. I was here because I had to be, and something told me that leaving wouldn't be as simple as calling Victor and asking for a ride back to my apartment. At 5:45 exactly, Mrs. Chen knocked. I'd chosen a dress from the closet, navy blue, simple but elegant, hitting just below my knees. It fit perfectly, of course. Everything here was perfect. That was part of the problem. She led me back through the house, this time to the ground floor, through hallways I hadn't seen before. We stopped in front of a set of double doors, dark wood carved with intricate patterns. Mr. Volkov's study, Mrs. Chen said. Remember what I told you? She knocked twice, then opened the door without waiting for a response. The room beyond was all dark wood and leather, books lining the walls from floor to ceiling. A massive desk dominated the space, and behind it sat Alexei Volkov, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid-fire Russian. He glanced up as we entered, held up one finger, wait, and continued his conversation. I stood in the doorway, uncertain, while Mrs. Chen retreated, closing the doors behind her. Alexei finished his call, set the phone down with careful precision, and finally looked at me properly. His gaze moved from my face to the dress to my hands, clasped nervously in front of me, and something flickered in his expression. You came, he said, as if there had been any doubt. I said I would. People say many things. Few follow through. He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace I remembered from the supermarket. "The dress suits you. Thank you." The words felt inadequate, childish. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell his cologne again, cedar and darkness, but not close enough to touch. "Are you afraid of me, Emma?" The question caught me off guard. "Honesty," Mrs. Chen had said. He valued honesty. "Yes," I admitted. "Good." He smiled. And it was that same terrifying expression from before, beautiful and utterly without warmth. Fear means you're paying attention. Fear keeps you safe. He moved to a side table where crystal decanters sat, amber liquid catching the light. "Drink?" "No, thank you." He poured himself 2 fingers of what looked like whiskey, neat. "Your predecessor lasted 3 weeks before she tried to steal from me." My blood went cold. What happened to her? She returned what she took and left. Alive, unharmed, but significantly poorer. He took a sip, watching me over the rim of the glass. "I'm not a monster, Emma, but I am not a fool either. People who work for me are compensated generously. In return, I expect absolute loyalty. I understand." "Do you?" He set the glass down, moved closer. "I don't think you understand yet. Not really. You see the house, the money, the obvious power. But you don't yet see what that power means. What it costs. What it demands." He was close now. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Could count the faint lines at the corners that spoke of stress or age or violence witnessed. "I'm going to tell you something," he said quietly, "and then we're never going to discuss it again. Are you listening?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "I am not a good man. The things I do, the business I conduct, the problems I solve, none of it would meet with your approval if you knew the details. But I operate by a code, Emma. I protect what's mine, I honor my agreements, and I never, ever lie." His hand came up, and I flinched involuntarily. He paused, something dark crossing his features, then very slowly, very carefully, brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. The touch was gentle, almost tender, and somehow that made it more terrifying than any threat. "You're mine now," he whispered. "For 6 months, you belong to me. Your safety is my responsibility. Your well-being is my concern. But in return, your loyalty is absolute. Can you do that?" I should have said no, should have demanded to leave, to escape, to get as far from this man and his beautiful prison as possible. "Yes," I breathed. His smile this time held something new, satisfaction, possession, and underneath it all, a hunger that made my stomach drop and my pulse quicken in equal measure. "Then let's begin." The first week passed in a blur of careful choreography and unspoken rules. I learned the rhythm of the house, how Mrs. Chen appeared at precisely 7 each morning with coffee and a detailed schedule, how Victor drove Alexei to various locations throughout the city, returning at unpredictable hours, how the other staff moved through the rooms like ghosts, efficient and silent, their eyes carefully averted whenever Alexei was present. I learned which doors were locked, always the east wing, always Alexei's private quarters, and which rooms I was expected to manage. The formal dining room that seated 20 but was never used. The library with its thousands of books in multiple languages. The sitting room where Alexei occasionally entertained guests. Men in expensive suits who spoke in low voices and left with sealed envelopes. I learned not to ask questions. But mostly I learned about Alexei himself. He rose at 5:30 each morning, already dressed in immaculate suits by the time I saw him at breakfast. He drank his coffee black, read 3 newspapers simultaneously, 2 in Russian, 1 in English, and took exactly 6 phone calls before 8 a.m. His schedule was a puzzle of meetings that Mrs. Chen called appointments, with a meaningful emphasis, lunches that lasted hours, and evening obligations that required my coordination but never my presence, except when they did. "Tonight," he said on Thursday morning, not looking up from the financial section, "you'll accompany me to dinner." I paused in the act of reviewing his calendar. "I will?" "Yes. 8 o'clock. Victor will bring you something appropriate to wear." Finally he glanced up and I caught the flash of something, amusement, challenge, in his dark eyes. Have you eaten at Rousseau before? Rousseau? The restaurant that required reservations 6 months in advance and had a dress code so strict they'd once turned away a senator's wife for wearing the wrong shoes. I'd seen it featured in magazines, always photographed in that soft focus way that made everything look like a dream. No, I admitted. You'll enjoy it. He returned to his newspaper, dismissing me. Then, as I reached the door, Emma? I turned. Yes? Wear your hair down. It wasn't a request. The dress Victor delivered at 6 o'clock was black silk, simple in cut but devastating in execution. It hugged every curve I had and suggested curves I didn't, falling to mid-thigh in a way that was elegant rather than provocative. The shoes were Louboutin. I recognized the red soles from fashion magazines, with heels high enough to be dangerous. I stared at myself in the full-length mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked sophisticated, expensive, like someone who belonged in Alexei's world. The illusion was perfect. The reality beneath felt like a lie. Victor knocked at 7:45. Mr. Volkov is waiting in the car. The SUV idled in the circular driveway, and through the tinted windows I could see Alexei's silhouette in the back seat. Victor opened the door for me, and I slid in carefully, hyper-aware of the dress's length, of the confined space, of Alexei's presence beside me. He turned as I settled into the leather seat, and his gaze moved over me with the same thorough assessment he applied to everything. This time, though, something shifted in his expression, a tightening around his eyes, a slight catch in his breath. Perfect, he murmured, and the word felt like a brand against my skin. The drive to the restaurant took 20 minutes through evening traffic. Alexei spent it on his phone, switching seamlessly between English and Russian, his voice never rising above a conversational tone, even when the content seemed to warrant it. I caught fragments, numbers, names, what might have been threats delivered with polite precision. Rousseau occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in the Arts District, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. The hostess greeted Alexei by name, her smile professional but warm, and led us past the crowded dining room to a private alcove tucked away from prying eyes. Mr. Volkov, your usual table. It's lovely to see you again. She handed us leather-bound menus. Stefan will be serving you tonight, alone with him in the intimate space, separated from the other diners by a half wall of frosted glass. I felt the weight of his attention settle on me like a physical thing. You're nervous, he observed, not unkindly. I've never been anywhere like this. The admission slipped out before I could stop it. Then let me guide you. He signaled the waiter. Stefan, tall and angular with the bearing of someone who took wine very seriously. We'll have the tasting menu, and bring the Chateau Margaux, the 2015. Stefan's eyebrows rose slightly. An excellent choice, sir. After he left, I leaned forward. I don't even know what a tasting menu is. Alexei's lips curved into something that almost resembled a genuine smile. Multiple small courses, each one designed to complement the last. You trust the chef to feed you well. He paused, his gaze holding mine. It requires surrender, letting someone else make choices for you. The subtext wasn't subtle. The wine came first. Poured with ceremonial care, I took a small sip and tried not to wince. I'd never developed a taste for alcohol that didn't come in a bottle with a screw cap. But Alexei watched me with such focused attention that I forced myself to take another sip, then another, until the warmth spread through my chest and loosened some of the tension coiled in my shoulders. The first course arrived. Something delicate on a small plate, arranged like art. I followed Alexei's lead, watching how he held his silverware, how he took measured bites, treating the food with the same precision he applied to everything else. Why am I here? I asked after the third course. Duck, I think, though it barely resembled any duck I'd ever seen. You could have come alone. I'm never alone, he corrected, and I realized it was true. Victor waited outside, I'd seen, and 2 other men in dark suits had positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the restaurant, their eyes constantly moving, cataloging threats. But I'm rarely accompanied by someone who isn't on my payroll in a professional capacity. I'm on your payroll. That's different. He set down his fork, giving me his complete attention. You're here because I wanted you here, because I'm curious about you, Emma Wright with her honest eyes and her scratched cars. There's nothing curious about me. I'm completely ordinary. Ordinary women don't leave notes confessing their mistakes when they could walk away free. Ordinary women don't say yes to men like me. He leaned back, the leather booth creaking softly. Tell me about your family. The question caught me off guard. Why? Because I ask. No room for argument in that tone. I took another sip of wine, liquid courage. There's not much to tell. My mother died 3 years ago, cancer. My father left when I was 6. I barely remember him. I have an older sister, but we haven't spoken in 2 years. She didn't approve of how I handled Mom's medical bills. The bitterness leaked into my voice despite my best efforts. She thought I should have let her die at home instead of bankrupting us with treatments that didn't work anyway. Something flickered across Alexei's face. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. Your sister was wrong, was she? Mom died anyway, and I'm still paying off the debt. Not anymore. He said it so casually, as if the crushing weight I'd carried for 3 years could be dismissed with 3 words. Your debt is paid. All of it. The hospital, the credit cards, everything. I had it taken care of your second day here. I stared at him, wine glass frozen halfway to my lips. You what? Consider it a signing bonus. You can't work effectively if you're distracted by financial concerns. He made it sound so reasonable, so practical. Besides, I pay my debts. You damaged my car through honesty, through doing the right thing. That deserves to be rewarded. I can't accept that. It's too much. It's done. His voice hardened slightly. Don't insult me by refusing. The money means nothing to me, Emma. Nothing. But your peace of mind, your ability to focus on your work without that weight, that has value. Why? The question burst out, raw and desperate. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Alexei was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an intensity that made me want to look away but couldn't. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, rougher. My mother died when I was 12. Preventable illness, but we had no money for doctors. I watched her suffer for 6 months. Watched her waste away while my father drank and my brothers scrambled to keep us fed. His jaw tightened, the only visible sign of emotion. I swore then that money would never again dictate who lived and who died in my world. So yes, Emma, I paid your debts, and I would do it again without hesitation. The vulnerability in his admission stunned me into silence. This was the man who commanded fear and respect in equal measure, who moved through the world with absolute authority, and he was giving me a piece of his past, a shard of the pain that had shaped him. Thank you, I whispered. Inadequate but sincere. He nodded once, then signaled for the next course, and the moment broke like glass shattering. The rest of dinner passed in a strange intimacy. He asked about my life, my dreams. The person I'd been before poverty had scraped away everything but survival. And I found myself answering, the wine and his unexpected honesty loosening my tongue. I told him about wanting to study literature in college, about dropping out when Mom got sick, about the slow erosion of hope that came with working minimum wage jobs that led nowhere. He listened with the same focused attention he brought to everything, asking questions that showed he was actually hearing me, actually caring about the answers. It was dangerous, this feeling. Dangerous to let myself believe that this man, this criminal, because that's what he was, what he had to be, could genuinely care about my small, ordinary struggles. But danger, I was learning, had its own seduction. Coffee came with dessert, something chocolate and decadent that melted on my tongue like sin. Alexei watched me taste it, watched my eyes close in involuntary pleasure, and when I opened them again, his expression had changed. The careful control had slipped, revealing something raw and hungry beneath. Emma? My name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse. I need to be honest with you. My heart hammered against my ribs. Okay, this, he gestured between us, was not part of the original plan. You were supposed to be an assistant, nothing more. Someone honest in a world full of liars, yes, but still just an employee. And now? Now I find myself thinking about you constantly, wondering what you're doing, what you're thinking. making excuses to see you, to be near you. He leaned forward, his hand reaching across the table to cover mine. The touch sent electricity racing up my arm. This is unprofessional, unwise. Potentially dangerous for both of us. But I've never been good at denying myself what I want. What do you want? I barely recognized my own voice, breathy and uncertain. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, each stroke deliberate, possessive. You. All of you. Not as my employee. As mine. The word hung between us, loaded with implication. His. Owned. Claimed. Possessed. I should have pulled my hand away. Should have reminded him that I was only here because of debt and desperation. That whatever was building between us was built on a foundation of coercion and circumstance. Instead, I turned my hand over, lacing my fingers through his. I'm already yours, I said quietly. You bought me the moment you paid my debts. His grip tightened, almost painful. No. I want you to choose this. Choose me. Not because you owe me, but because you want... He stopped, seemed to struggle with words for the first time since I'd met him. I want you to want this, and if I do? The admission terrified me even as I spoke it. If I do want this, want you, what then? What happens when 6 months are over? Then we'll renegotiate. His smile was sharp, predatory. I'm very good at negotiations, Emma. And I never let go of what's mine. There it was again. Mine. The word should have felt like chains. Instead, it felt like safety, like shelter, like someone finally caring enough to claim me when I'd been invisible for so long. I was falling. Had been falling since the moment he'd walked into that supermarket, all controlled power and dangerous interest. The real question wasn't whether I'd fall. It was whether he'd catch me or let me shatter against the ground. Victor appeared at Alexei's subtle signal, and we rose to leave. But as Alexei helped me into my coat, his hands lingered on my shoulders, his breath warm against my ear. Stay with me tonight, he murmured. Not as my employee, as my guest. My choice. Every rational thought screamed warning. This was too fast, too intense, too dangerous. He was dangerous. A man who solved expensive problems with methods I didn't want to imagine, who commanded loyalty through fear and money, who existed in a world where violence was just another business tool. But his hands on my shoulders felt like an anchor, and I was so tired of drowning alone. Yes, I whispered. His sharp intake of breath was my only warning before he spun me around, his lips crashing against mine with barely restrained hunger. The kiss was possession and promise, claiming and question, everything I'd imagined and nothing I'd prepared for. His hand cupped the back of my neck, holding me in place as his mouth moved against mine with devastating precision, and I melted into him. Surrender and desire tangled until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were black with want, his careful control fractured into something raw and real. Come, he commanded, taking my hand. And I followed him into the darkness, knowing I was making a choice that would change everything. Knowing I might regret this tomorrow or next week or in 6 months when whatever this was inevitably ended. But tonight, I wanted to be chosen, wanted to be someone's mine, even if that someone was Alexei Volkov, with his dangerous eyes and his blood-stained money and his promise of protection that felt like both salvation and damnation wrapped in expensive silk. Tonight, I wanted to fall. Tomorrow, I'd worry about the landing. The east wing of Alexei's estate had always been forbidden territory, locked doors and whispered warnings about respecting his privacy. Now, following him through those doors felt like crossing into another world entirely, one where the rules I'd learned no longer applied. His private quarters were nothing like the rest of the house. Where the public spaces were cold elegance and formal displays of wealth, these rooms were warm, lived in, personal, dark wood furniture, walls lined with books in multiple languages, a fireplace that actually looked used, photographs in silver frames, a woman who must have been his mother, her smile sad and beautiful, 3 boys who shared Alexei's dark eyes, an older man with hard features and harder eyes. My family, he said, catching me looking, all dead now. my mother from illness, my brothers from the life we chose, my father from his own stupidity. No emotion in his voice, just facts stated plainly. I'm the last Volkov, the survivor. The loneliness in those words cut deeper than any display of grief could have. He poured us both vodka from a crystal decanter, the good kind, he explained, from his homeland, and we stood by the window overlooking the gardens. The night had turned the manicured lawns into pools of shadow, broken only by strategic lighting that made everything look theatrical. Staged. Do you ever regret it? I asked, emboldened by wine and vodka and the strange intimacy of this moment. The life you chose? Every day. He took a long drink. And not at all. Regret is pointless, Emma. I did what I had to do to survive, to build something, to become someone who couldn't be ignored or dismissed or stepped on. The cost was high. But the alternative was death, slow death from poverty or fast death from weakness. He turned to look at me, and in the dim light his features were softer, more human. You understand that, I think. You've made your own choices to survive. Leaving a note on a car isn't quite the same as... I stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. As becoming a criminal? He smiled without humor. No, probably not. But the impulse is the same. We do what we must with what we have. You had honesty. I had violence. We both used our tools to build something from nothing. He set down his glass and moved closer, until I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell that cedar cologne mixed with vodka, and something darker, more primal. I'm going to kiss you again, he said, giving me time to refuse, to step back, to reclaim the professional distance that had protected us both. And then, I'm going to take you to my bed, and if at any point you want to stop, you say so, and Victor will drive you back to your quarters. No consequences, no judgment. Do you understand? My mouth had gone dry. Yes. Then say it. Say you want this. I want this. The words came out stronger than I felt. I want you. This kiss was different from the restaurant. Slower, deeper, a deliberate claiming rather than an explosion of need. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me against him, and I went willingly, my fingers tangling in his hair, as he walked me backward toward the bedroom. The room beyond was all dark colors and masculine simplicity. A massive bed dominating the space. More books stacked on nightstands. Another fireplace casting flickering shadows across the walls. He laid me down on sheets that felt like liquid silk, and I watched as he shrugged off his jacket, loosened his tie. Each movement precise and controlled, even now. You're beautiful, he murmured, his hand tracing the line of my jaw, down my neck, along my collarbone. So fucking beautiful, it makes me want to lock you away where no one else can see you. The possessiveness should have scared me. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my belly. That sounds like a very expensive prison, I managed. His laugh was low, rough. The most expensive, golden bars and silk chains. His lips followed the path his hand had traced, pressing kisses to my skin that felt like brands. Would you let me keep you, Emma, if I asked? You're not asking. You're taking. No. He pulled back, his eyes boring into mine with fierce intensity. I take many things. Money, power, respect. But not this. Not you. This you have to give. And there it was. The choice he'd promised me at the restaurant. The chance to walk away, to preserve whatever dignity I had left, to refuse to be another possession in his collection of expensive things. I reached up and pulled him down to me, my answer written in the way I opened for him. Surrendered to him. Let him consume me with kisses and touches that mapped every inch of exposed skin. Then, I'm giving. I whispered against his mouth, I'm giving you everything. What followed was tender and rough in equal measure. Alexei's control fraying as his hands explored, as his mouth found places that made me gasp and arch into him. He undressed me slowly, reverently, each piece of clothing removed like unwrapping something precious. And when he finally claimed me fully, completely, it felt like both destruction and creation, the death of who I'd been and the birth of something new, something that belonged to him in ways that terrified and thrilled me. After, we lay tangled in sheets damp with sweat and satisfaction, his arm heavy across my waist, his breath warm against my shoulder. "Stay," he murmured, already half asleep. "Stay here. In my bed, in my house, in my life." I already agreed to 6 months. Fuck 6 months. His arm tightened around me. "Stay forever. Forever." The word hung in the air between us, impossible and perfect in equal measure. I didn't answer. I just pressed closer to his warmth and let myself drift, pretending for a moment that forever was something people like us could actually have. I woke to shouting. The bedside clock read 3:47 a.m., and Alexei's side of the bed was empty, the sheets already cold. I sat up, disoriented, trying to place the voices coming from somewhere below. Angry, rapid-fire Russian, punctuated by the occasional English curse. I should have stayed in bed, should have pulled the sheets over my head and pretended I heard nothing, remembered nothing, understood nothing. That was survival in Alexei's world. Instead, I pulled on his discarded shirt. It fell to mid-thigh, smelling of cedar and him, and crept to the door. The hallway was dark except for light spilling from the staircase. I moved toward it on bare feet, keeping to the shadows, driven by curiosity that would probably get me killed one day. The voices were clearer now, coming from what I recognized as Alexei's study. 3 distinct speakers, all male, all angry. Completely unacceptable, Alexei. You know the rules about personal involvement. I don't answer to you, Dmitri, Alexei's voice cold as winter. I don't answer to anyone. You answer to the bratva, a different voice, older, harder. You always have. Your brothers understood that. Your father understood. My father was a drunk who died choking on his own vomit. My brothers were idiots who got themselves killed over pride and stupidity. I built this organization into something that matters, something that has real power. And I did it by knowing when to follow rules and when to break them. And the girl? Dmitri again. That's you breaking rules? The silence that followed made my blood run cold. The girl, Alexei said slowly, each word carved from ice, is not your concern. She's a liability, a witness, a potential problem that could compromise everything we've built. She's mine. The words cracked through the study like a gunshot. And if anyone touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong, I will personally ensure they spend their last hours begging for death. Are we clear? More silence. Then footsteps, heavy and angry. I scrambled back toward the bedroom, but I wasn't fast enough. The study door flew open, and 2 men emerged, both older than Alexei, both wearing expensive suits that didn't quite hide the bulk of weapons underneath. They stopped when they saw me, taking in Alexei's shirt, my bare legs, my obvious presence in the East Wing where no staff member should ever be. Dmitri, I assumed it was him, smiled, but there was no warmth in it. So this is the honest girl. The one who leaves notes on cars. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Fear had turned my legs to stone. Get out. Alexei's voice came from behind them, and when they turned, I saw his face. Cold fury barely contained, every line of his body radiating deadly intent. Both of you, now, before I forget we're supposed to be on the same side. They left, but not before Dmitri threw one last look at me. Assessment and threat wrapped together. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Alexei stood in the hallway, fists clenched at his sides, breathing hard. When he finally looked at me, some of the fury drained away, replaced by something that might have been concern. You shouldn't have come downstairs. I heard shouting. I was worried. Worried. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You should be worried about yourself, Emma. You should be fucking terrified. Do you understand what you've gotten yourself into? No, I admitted, but I'm starting to get an idea. He moved toward me, and I forced myself not to flinch. His hands came up to cut my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. I told you I'm not a good man, but I need you to understand, truly understand, what that means. The people you just saw, they're part of the Bratva, the Russian organization I work for, work with, lead in this territory, and they're right to be concerned about you. Why? Because you make me weak. The admission seemed to pain him, because for the first time in 15 years, I give a fuck about something other than power and money and respect. Because I would burn this entire organization to ash before I let anyone hurt you. And that makes me vulnerable, predictable. I didn't ask you to care about me. No, you didn't. His smile was bitter. You just left an honest note on a car and destroyed every fucking wall I'd built. You just existed, all vulnerable and brave and real in a world full of liars and killers. And now, I can't let you go. Then don't. I covered his hands with mine. I'm here. I'm choosing to stay. Whatever that means, whatever comes, I'm choosing you. You don't know what you're choosing, then show me. I held his gaze, refusing to look away. Show me your world, all of it. The good, the bad, the parts that will probably give me nightmares. I'd rather know than be protected by ignorance. He studied me for a long moment, searching for something. Fear, maybe, or second thoughts. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he nodded once, sharp and decisive. Okay, tomorrow I'll show you who I really am, what I really do. And after that, you can decide if you still want to stay. I'll stay, I said with more confidence than I felt. We'll see. He pulled me back toward the bedroom, and we climbed into bed, but this time there was no passion, no heat. Just him holding me like I might disappear. His face buried in my hair, his breathing gradually slowing. Alexei, I whispered into the darkness, what did they mean about your brothers? About them being idiots? His arms tightened around me. They challenged the wrong people, made threats they couldn't back up, thought the family name would protect them. A pause. It didn't. Family means nothing in this world without the power to defend it. I learned that lesson. They didn't. And your father? Drank himself to death after my mother died. Couldn't handle the guilt of killing her with his negligence. His voice was flat, emotionless. I was 16. Dmitri and the others took me in, taught me the business, shaped me into what I am now. In a way, I owe them everything. But you don't like them. I respect them. I honor my obligations to them, but like? He laughed quietly. No, Emma. I don't like anyone except... He didn't finish the sentence, but his meaning was clear. We lay in silence after that, both pretending to sleep, both knowing the other was awake. Outside, the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky. Soon, the house would wake, the staff would begin their routines, and the careful illusion of normalcy would resume, but nothing was normal anymore. I'd crossed into Alexei's world, and there was no going back. Tomorrow, he'd show me the darkness he lived in, and I'd have to decide if I could survive there, or if some prices were too high, even for someone as desperate as I'd been. His breathing finally evened out, deep and regular, and I let myself relax into his warmth. Whatever tomorrow brought, whatever horrors or truths he revealed, tonight I was safe in his arms. Tonight, I was his. And maybe, just maybe, he was mine too. Morning came too quickly, pale sunlight filtering through curtains I didn't remember closing. Alexei was already awake, dressed in dark jeans and a black sweater, the most casual I'd ever seen him. He sat in the chair by the window, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Get dressed, he said quietly. Wear something comfortable. We're going out. Mrs. Chen had left clothes outside the bedroom door. Jeans, a soft cashmere sweater, boots. I dressed quickly, hyper-aware of Alexei's gaze tracking my every movement. When I emerged from the bathroom, he was waiting by the door, car keys in hand. No Victor today? I asked. No Victor. No guards. Just you and me. He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. I want you to see this without the filters, without the performance. Just the truth. The car was a different one, still expensive. A sleek BMW, but not the bulletproof SUVs I'd grown accustomed to. Alexei drove himself, navigating through morning traffic with the same precision he applied to everything else. We drove for 40 minutes, leaving the wealthy suburbs behind, moving into industrial areas where warehouses squatted beside rail yards, and the streets were pocked with potholes. Finally, he pulled into a parking lot, fronting a nondescript concrete building. No signs, no indicators of what lay inside, just a number painted on the door, 47. This is one of my legitimate businesses, Alexei said, as we walked toward the entrance. Import-export, mostly textiles, some electronics. It's registered, taxed, completely legal. He punched a code into the keypad. Everything I'm about to show you, everything you see today, it stays between us. Understood? Yes. Inside, the warehouse was surprisingly organized. Rows of shipping containers, workers moving with efficient purpose, forklifts carrying pallets. We walked through it all, Alexei greeting workers by name, checking manifests, examining inventory. It looked legitimate. It felt legitimate. Then we went upstairs. The office level was a different world. Men in suits hunched over computers, tracking information I couldn't begin to understand. Radio equipment lined one wall, communications devices that looked military-grade. And in a conference room visible through glass walls, a meeting was in progress. Hard-faced men arguing over maps and documents. This is the real business, Alexei said, his hand on the small of my back, guiding me through the controlled chaos. The warehouse below is real, profitable even, but it's also cover for everything else. Money laundering, smuggling routes, information trafficking. We move things for people who can't use legitimate channels, sometimes drugs, sometimes weapons, sometimes just cash that needs to disappear and reappear clean. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay calm, to listen. I don't deal in people, he continued, his voice hardening. That's a line I won't cross. No trafficking, no exploitation. Everything else. He shrugged. Everything else is fair game if the price is right. He led me to his private office, a corner room with windows overlooking the rail yard. Once inside, he poured us both coffee from a machine that looked absurdly expensive for such a utilitarian space. Questions, he said. Ask me anything. This is your chance to know everything. I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, needing the warmth. How did you get into this? I told you my brothers were idiots. What I didn't tell you is that I learned from their mistakes. When they died, I was 19, already working for the Bratva, doing small jobs, collections, muscle work, the grunt labor of organized crime. But I watched, learned, saw how the smart ones operated. I saved money, made connections, and when an opportunity came to take over a small territory, I took it. Violently, efficiently, and with enough brutality that no one questioned my authority afterward. You killed people, not a question. Yes. No hesitation, no shame. Many people. Some who deserved it, some who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm not proud of it, Emma, but I'm not ashamed either. It was survival. It was business. And now? Now I have people who do that work for me. I haven't personally killed anyone in 3 years. He smiled grimly. Progress, I suppose, though I would kill again without hesitation if it meant protecting what's mine. What's mine? Always that phrase, claiming and possessing. The men from last night, I said. Dimitri and the other one, they think I'm a problem. They think you're a weakness, which amounts to the same thing in their minds. Alexei moved to the window, looking out over his empire, and they're right. You are my weakness, Emma. You make me care about things other than power and survival. You make me want things I have no right to want. Normalcy, peace, maybe even something that looks like happiness. Is that so terrible? In my world? Yes. He turned to face me. Because the moment someone realizes what you mean to me, you become a target. Every enemy I've made, every rival who wants my territory, every ambitious lieutenant who thinks they can take my place, they'll all see you as the easiest way to hurt me. The fear that had been simmering since last night crystallized into something sharp and real. So what do? We have 2 choices. He crossed to me, taking my hands in his. 1. I let you go. Victor drives you back to your apartment. I give you enough money to start over somewhere else, and we never see each other again. You'll be safe, because you'll be nothing to me. Just another employee who finished her contract. My chest tightened painfully. And the other choice? You stay. You become officially mine, not as an employee, not as temporary arrangement, but as my partner. My woman. Under my protection permanently. His grip tightened. But that means accepting everything that comes with it. The danger, the violence, the constant threat. It means learning to live with security, with restrictions on your freedom, with the knowledge that people might try to hurt you to get to me. That's not really a choice, I whispered. You're asking me to choose between losing you and living in constant danger. No, I'm asking you to choose between safety and me. There's a difference. He pulled me closer. I can keep you safe, Emma. I have the resources, the power, the people. But I can't make your life normal. I can't give you the quiet, peaceful existence you probably deserve. I can only give you luxury and danger wrapped in silk and steel. I looked up at him, at this man who terrified and attracted me in equal measure, who'd somehow become essential to me in the span of 2 weeks. The smart choice, the safe choice, was obvious. Walk away. Take the money. Build a life far from here, far from him, far from the violence and darkness that surrounded him like a cloak. But when had I ever made the smart choice? I stay, I said firmly. I choose you. Danger and all. His exhale sounded like relief and resignation mixed together. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, probably both. He kissed me then, hard and desperate, like he was trying to convince himself this was real, that I was real and choosing him despite everything. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine, his breathing unsteady. There's something else you need to know, he said quietly. The man who got you pregnant, my blood turned to ice. What? I had you investigated when you left the note. Standard procedure. I needed to know who I was dealing with. He pulled back slightly, studying my face. You had a child 6 months ago. A daughter. She's in foster care because you couldn't afford to keep her. Tears burned my eyes. That wound was still raw, still aching. I didn't have a choice. I had nothing. No money, no support, no way to... My voice broke. The father, Alexei continued, his voice taking on an edge. His name is Marcus Chen. He works for me. Or he did, until 3 days ago. The world tilted. What? He's a low-level operator, runs numbers, handles small transactions. About 8 months ago, he stole from me. Not much, just $20,000, but theft is theft. I've been looking for him ever since. His jaw tightened. Imagine my surprise when my investigation into you revealed he was your daughter's father, a man who got you pregnant, abandoned you, and then stole from me. The symmetry is almost poetic. Horror crawled up my spine. Alexei, what did you... I found him yesterday. He's alive, if that's what you're worried about. But he's paid back what he stole with interest. His kneecaps will heal eventually. He said it so casually, like breaking someone's legs was equivalent to filing a complaint. But more importantly, I made him sign over all parental rights. He'll never come near you or your daughter again. I should have been horrified, should have been disgusted by the violence, by the casual brutality. Instead, I felt something else. A savage satisfaction that Marcus had finally faced consequences for what he'd done to me. My daughter, I whispered. Sophia. Her name is Sophia. I know. Alexei's expression softened. And if you want her back, if you want to be her mother, I can make that happen. I have lawyers, connections, resources. I can navigate the foster system, expedite the process, ensure you get custody. She could be home within a month. The offer hung between us, massive and terrifying, and exactly what I'd dreamed of since the day I'd handed her over to the social worker. My arms empty and my heart shattered. Why would you do that? I asked through tears. She's not yours. She's not your responsibility. No, she's not. He wiped away my tears with his thumb, gentle, despite the violence those same hands had inflicted on Marcus. But you're mine. And that means your daughter is under my protection too. I told you, Emma. I protect what's mine, all of it. I collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest as he held me, stroking my hair and murmuring in Russian, words I didn't understand, but that sounded like comfort, like promises. I want her back, I choked out. I want my baby back. Then you'll have her. He kissed the top of my head. I'll start the process today. Mrs. Chen can help prepare a nursery. Whatever you need, whatever Sophia needs, it's yours. We stood there in his office overlooking his criminal empire while I cried for everything I'd lost and everything I might get back. This man, this dangerous, violent man, was offering me the one thing I thought I'd never have again: my daughter, my family, a chance to be whole. The price was my soul, probably. My innocence, definitely. My safety, almost certainly. But standing in Alexei's arms, feeling his steady heartbeat against my cheek, knowing he'd broken a man's legs for hurting me, knowing he'd move heaven and earth to give me back my child, I couldn't bring myself to care about the price. Some things were worth the darkness. 3 weeks later, Sophia came home. She was 6 months old, all chubby cheeks and dark curls, and when the social worker placed her in my arms, I felt something in my chest crack open. All the love I'd locked away, all the hope I'd suffocated, flooding back in a rush that left me breathless. Alexei watched from the doorway of the nursery he'd had created, a room done in soft pastels with every possible baby item money could buy. His expression was unreadable, but when Sophia looked at him and smiled, something in his face softened. "She likes you," I said, settling into the rocking chair with my daughter. Children are good judges of character, or terrible ones, depending on your perspective. He moved closer, one finger reaching out to touch Sophia's tiny hand. She grasped it immediately, holding on with surprising strength. "She has your eyes. And her father's hair." I still couldn't think of Marcus without anger, but it was distant now, dulled by satisfaction that he'd paid for what he'd done. "She's beautiful." Alexei crouched beside the chair, his attention split between me and Sophia. "You're both beautiful. My girls. My girls." Another claim, another possession. But this time I didn't mind. Mrs. Chen knocked softly. "Mr. Volkov, Dmitri is here for the meeting." Alexei's jaw tightened. "Tell him I'll be down in 5 minutes." After she left, he turned back to me. "I need to handle business. Will you be all right?" "We'll be fine." I smiled, more genuinely than I had in months. "Go. Do what you need to do." He kissed me softly, then pressed another kiss to Sophia's forehead. "I'll be back in an hour. Victor is stationed outside if you need anything." I watched him leave, this man who'd destroyed my life and rebuilt it into something unrecognizable. This criminal who'd given me back my daughter. This monster who held me like I was precious. Sophia gurgled in my arms, her tiny hand still grasping at air, at me, at everything. She had no idea what world she'd been born into, what darkness surrounded the pretty nursery and expensive toys. Maybe that was for the best. I rocked her gently, humming a lullaby my mother used to sing, and tried not to think about the future, about the dangers that would always hover at the edges of our lives, about the violence that bankrolled our security, about the precarious balance between the love I felt and the darkness that enabled it. For now, I had my daughter back. I had Alexei's protection, his resources, his fierce and possessive devotion. I had everything I'd never dared to hope for. And if the price was living in the shadows, learning to look away from the blood on his hands, accepting that my safety came from his capacity for violence, well, I'd already made that choice. I'd made it the moment I left a note on a scratched car, setting in motion a series of events that had led me here, to this nursery, to this man, to this strange and dangerous version of happiness. The sound of raised voices drifted up from below. Alexei and Dmitri, arguing again about something I didn't understand and didn't want to. Tomorrow there would be more arguments, more threats, more careful navigation of the violent world Alexei inhabited. But tonight, I had my daughter in my arms, and the promise of Alexei returning to us when his business was done. Tonight, that was enough. Sophia fell asleep against my chest, her breathing soft and even, completely trusting. I held her close, breathing in her baby sweet scent, and made a silent vow. I would protect her from this world as long as I could. She would know love and safety, even if both came wrapped in silk and steel, financed by blood money and criminal enterprise. She would know she was wanted. That was more than I'd had. The door opened quietly, and Alexei slipped back in earlier than expected. His tie was loosened, his expression weary. But when he saw us, me in the rocking chair with Sophia sleeping peacefully, something in him relaxed. "Meeting's done?" I whispered. For now. He moved behind the chair, his hands coming to rest on my shoulders. Dimitri's getting old, cautious. He doesn't like the changes I'm making, the legitimacy I'm building, but he'll adapt or he'll retire. Either way, he won't threaten what's mine. There was steel in those words, a promise and a threat rolled together. We stayed like that for a long moment. Me holding our daughter, Alexei holding me. The three of us a strange little family forged from desperation and danger, and something that might have been love, if love could survive in such dark soil. Thank you, I whispered finally. For all of this. For her, for me, for everything. His hands tightened on my shoulders. You don't thank me, Emma. You're mine. I protect what's mine. That's not kindness. That's possession. I know. And I did. I knew exactly what I was to him. Claimed property, a weakness he couldn't afford but couldn't resist. A vulnerability wrapped in skin and bone. I'm okay with that. Are you? He came around to kneel in front of the chair, looking up at me with those dark, unreadable eyes. Are you truly okay with belonging to a monster? I looked at him. This man who'd paid my debts, broken my ex's legs, moved criminal empires to give me back my child. This man who held me like I was precious and killed without hesitation. This man who was darkness and safety, wrapped together so tightly I couldn't separate one from the other anymore. You're my monster, I said simply. That makes all the difference. He smiled then, real and warm and devastatingly beautiful. Then we're keeping each other. Yes, I agreed, we're keeping each other. Sophia stirred in my arms, making a small sound of protest before settling back into sleep. Alexei reached out to stroke her cheek with unexpected tenderness, and I saw our future laid out in that gesture, complicated and dangerous and strange, but ours. We would make it work. Somehow, impossibly, we would make this work. Because I'd left a note on a scratched car, and in doing so, I'd scratched the surface of Alexei Volkov's carefully controlled world, and now we were bound together by choice and circumstance, by danger and devotion, by all the messy, complicated threads that tied people together when they decided to fall, despite every reason not to. It wasn't the life I'd imagined. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd dreamed of as a girl. But standing in a nursery bought with blood money, holding a daughter reclaimed through violence, loved by a man who promised possession instead of partnership, I found I didn't care. This was my life now. Our life, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Outside, the sun set over Alexei's estate, painting the gardens in gold and shadow. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new careful negotiations of the dangerous world we inhabited. But tonight, we were safe. We were together. We were whole, and in the end, that was all that mattered.